Anxiety Warriors. Today's video comes upon request. I got a message from someone who asked me to make a video to address anxiety about what it's going to look like or what's going to happen when it's time to go back to work. So she told me that she was having some issues with sleeping at night, that she finds herself kind of ruminating, kind of thinking, chewing on this idea of what is it going to be like when she's got to go back to work. So the first thing, of course, that we want to recognize is that this is anxiety. Anxiety is an asshole, and it's going to show up and it's going to find all of the things it can possibly find to be anxious about. And what happens next is a pretty common theme. We don't know what it's going to be like when you go back to work. We don't know when that's going to be. We don't know how that's going to look. We don't know. We don't really know anything except for that we know that it's probably not just going to be that one day everything is just, we just go right back to the way things were. We do know that. So it comes down to anxiety management then. We have to control our thoughts. We have to control the way that we're thinking about that question, what comes next. We have to control our thoughts around that so that we can reduce our nervous system, right? Our nervous system, when we start thinking and worrying about the future, our nervous system gets all agitated. It's ready to fight. It's like, yes, problems, let's deal with problems. But that's not helping you sleep. That's not helping you with your digestion. That's not helping you with your mood. That's not helping you with, memory, with any of those things that you need to kind of function in a daily life. When your nervous system's overactivated, those are getting disrupted. The request came from somebody who's in a leadership position at her job. And so I think that she's probably carrying a little bit of extra of like, what happens when we go back to work and how do I handle that as a leader? So first I want to recognize that what your relative power level is in your workplace is going to have a big impact on what going back to work looks like. So if you're in a position of leadership where you can kind of help shape what that looks like for the people that you work with, that's going to feel very different than somebody who's maybe going back in, maybe who doesn't have a position of power or leadership, who's going to be told how things are going to go and they're going to have to kind of comply with that. Those are two different kinds of things, and so I'm going to kind of try to address both of those. Anxiety's favorite thing to do is borrow other anxiety. So anxiety will be eating its own meal, having its own anxiety, regular things here, the house is messy or I've got to pay bills or whatever, like regular, here's the anxiety it's chewing on. And then it will be like, oh, my neighbors have some anxiety. They're having a rough time. Their fence fell down. I'm gonna go ahead and worry about that for them. Let me add that to my plate. Then anxiety is like, oh, my mom is really worried about this other things. I'm gonna borrow her anxiety. Oh, the news is telling me that I need to be worried about this. I'm gonna go ahead and borrow the anxiety from China. I'm gonna borrow anxiety from Italy, from these other places. I'm gonna just add those also. I have this big, huge heaving plate of anxiety. But really only a portion of that anxiety actually belongs to you. And so one of the things that you wanna do in terms of anxiety management is figure out what is actually on your plate right now. And the truth is that what happens when you go back to work is not on your plate right now. That is not a decision that can be solved right now. That is not a problem that can be addressed right now. That is literally borrowing anxiety from the future that hasn't arrived yet. And so the first piece of advice that I can give you around that is to really just start reciting that to yourself. That is not a problem that has arrived yet. It is not time to make that decision yet. It is not time to make plans for what it's going to be like when it's time to go back to work. When it is time to go back to work, it will be time to make those plans. And so the second piece of advice that I have to give you is to trust yourself. Is to know that when it is time to make those plans, when it is time to decide how to go back to work, you will be able to make those decisions. You will be able to come up with a plan. You will be able to ask for help where you need it. You will have the chance to decide how you're going to go back to work. And you got to be able to trust yourself that you will be able to handle that when that arrives, while also recognizing that that has not arrived yet. If you are trying to solve tomorrow's problem today, you're not helping yourself because that's not possible. When you do go back to work, when it is time for you to make that plan, when it is time to think about what it's going to be like when you go back to work, I think something that's going to be really important for everybody across, roles and across workplaces is communication and transparency. And what I mean by that is that everybody's going to be having a tough time with this. Nobody knows what this is going to be like. From the tops of the companies to the bottoms of the companies, nobody knows what this is going to look like. Across industries, everything. So that means that if we can all go back into the workplace and say, what? None of us really know what's happening. We're all in this boat together. And be transparent about that and communicate about that, that's going to feel a lot more comforting than you blustering in there and acting like you know all the answers and you know exactly how this is going to go. That's not going to be very reassuring. That's not very collaborative. And it's also not going to be very accurate because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how that's going to go. Now is not the time to solve that problem. But when it is time to solve that problem, you are going to be able to trust yourself. You can solve that problem. And you can trust yourself to incorporate good communication, good transparency, collaboration, working together to kind of create the workplace that you're looking for, recognizing that everybody is kind of having this shared experience. I think it is very helpful when you talk about going back into the workplace, you talk about going kind of back into some of the old things that you were doing before, is really making sure you're working on your insight right now, paying attention to what you need, paying attention to, how things have changed for you, how your needs might have changed, how your goals might have changed. Don't numb yourself, don't hunker down and pretend like none of this is happening and then suddenly you're back in your life. This is happening, this is real. And so if you can spend this time not borrowing the anxiety of the future, but really sitting with what's happening now, really reassessing your life, reassessing your goals, reassessing, what your political views, there's a lot of problems that are happening in the United States right now. Systemic issues are really being brought to light that have been kind of hidden in a lot of ways. And so you may find yourself kind of shifting in how you feel about society and how you want to engage in our culture and our political systems. And so letting yourself change, letting yourself be different and working on that insight so that when you do go back to work, you're not trying to figure out your needs now and your values and your goals and what's changed while also trying to adjust to the workplace and getting back in that. Do now's work now so that you can do later's work when it arrives, when it's time for that. And then the last piece of advice that I have for going back to work or getting back into the workplace is letting it be new. If you're putting the pressure on yourself to go back and making it be what it was before, you're asking yourself to do something that's unattainable. We will never not have had this experience. We can never undo the trauma that has happened to this country and to the world at large. And if you can go back in knowing that this is going to be a new kind of workplace, it may be the same workplace you've been at forever, but it's going to be new. You're going to engage with people differently. Your customers or your clients or, whoever it is that you're working with in your workplace, they're going to be different. It is going to be new, and it's okay for that to be new. Again, you can trust yourself to handle it. Now, many of you may be in fields or careers or workplaces, again, where you've been for a really long time. And so it may have been a long time since you were new at something. And I want to invite you to embrace that, to really let this be a time of rebirth, of, that sort of rising from the ashes, of recreating and intentionally creating something that you want out of your life and out of your workplace. So again, don't solve tomorrow's problems today. Trust that when they come, you're going to be able to do that with good communication, transparency. You're going to work on your own insight. You're going to work on now's problems now. And you're going to really, evaluate where you are in your life. And then you're going to let yourself be new and be a beginner when you go back into the workplace, still kind of holding that trust and that truth that you are going to be able to handle it. And you are going to be able to handle this. You don't have to solve those problems today. You can do it later. Hope y'all are taking good care of yourself. Hope that you are doing lots of good coping skills, which includes distraction, but is not only distraction. Hit me up. If you have questions you want me to answer in a video, you can send an email to thegraciousmind@gmail.com. Or you can find me through my website, drkarenmcdowell.com, or through Instagram, Facebook, here on YouTube. Let me know if you have a topic you want me to address. I'd love to talk about it.